This lesson is about adding and subtracting real numbers, and it's lesson 10 in your book. Here's some rules for adding and subtracting signed numbers, positives and negatives. First, we want to rewrite the problem as addition only. So any subtraction, we will change to plus the negative. Then we'll group and add terms with like signs. So we'll put the positives together and the negatives together and then add those two sets. Then we'll add our terms with unlike signs. So let's try it. Here we have a problem with addition and subtraction, and it's a bunch of fractions. And usually we need a common denominator to add fractions, and here we have that, so we don't have to worry about that common denominator. So my first step is to rewrite the problem using addition only. So this is a negative 1/5 plus 3/5. That's addition there, so that's good. Here we have minus 2/5. So I'm going to rewrite minus 2/5 as plus a negative 2/5. And right here we have minus negative 4/5. And we know that minus and negative is the same as adding the positive. So plus 4/5. All right, that's my first step. Now I'm going to group my terms with like signs. So I'm going to put my positives together and my negatives together. So here I have positive 3/5. I'm going to start with that. Takes care of that term. And then I have plus 4/5. Takes care of that term. Then I'm going to go to my negatives. Again, I'm adding a negative 1/5. And then I'm adding a negative 2/5. All right, so all my terms are accounted for. Now that I've grouped my terms with like signs, I'm going to add each of those sets. So I'm going to add 3/5 plus 4/5. And when you add, you just, with common denominator, you just add the tops, the numerators. So 3 plus 4 is 7. So that gives me 7/5. And then here I have negative 1/5 plus negative 2/5. 1 plus 2 is 3, so that gives me a negative 3/5. And my final step is to add terms with unlike signs. So I'm adding 7 plus negative 3, which gets me a positive 4 over 5. All right, let's try another one. This one has decimals instead of fractions, but we're going to do the problem the exact same way. So I'm going to start by rewriting the entire problem as addition only. It starts with 3.16, and then I'm adding negative 1.22. Now here I have minus 4.73, so I'm going to rewrite that as plus a negative 4.73. And then finally, plus 5.6. Now that I've rewritten it all as addition, I'll group my terms with like signs. So I'm going to start with my positive 3.16. Takes care of that term. And then I've got plus 5.6. All my positives are accounted for, so then I'll go on to my negatives. Negative 1.22. Plus a negative 4.73. Now I'll add those groups together. 3.16 plus 5.6 is 8.76. 1.22 plus 4.73 is 5.95, so that's a negative 5.95. And finally, I'll combine my terms with unlike signs. And when I add 8.76 plus negative 5.95, I'm going to get a positive because the positive has the bigger number, a positive 2.81. Here we have two expressions that we want to compare. Now, it's usually easiest to compare when we have both fractions or both decimals. So we'll turn those into both fractions or both decimals at the end. But before we can compare them, we have to simplify them. So we'll start with the left side. On the left side, we have some fractions, and we want to rewrite them all as addition. So we've got 3/8 plus a negative 5/8. And then we have minus 1/8, which I'm going to rewrite as plus a negative 1/8. Now I would group my like signs together, but I have my only positive here, and then I've got both my negatives here, so they're already grouped together. Then I'm going to combine my terms with like signs. Again, 3/8 is my only positive. 5 plus 1 is 6, so that gives me a negative 6/8. And the reason I'm not simplifying this negative 6/8 or reducing it is because when I add these two fractions, I need a common denominator anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it as my common denominator. Finally, I'll add my term with unlike signs. So 3 plus negative 6 is negative 3. My denominator is 8. So the simplified form of the left side is negative 3/8. Now let's do the right side. I want to rewrite it as all addition. Negative 2.75 plus 6.25. And then instead of minus 3.75, I'll write plus a negative 3.75. Now I'll group together my like signs. 6.25 is my only positive term. Then I've got plus a negative 2.75 plus a negative 3.75. Now I want to combine my terms with like signs. 6.25 is my only positive, plus 2.75 plus 3.75 is 6.5, so this is a negative 6.5. And finally, I'll combine my terms with opposite signs. So 6.25 plus negative 6.5 gives me negative 0.25. Now, in order to accurately compare this, they have to be both fractions or both decimals, and I think it's going to be pretty easy to turn this into a fraction, so I'll do that. I know that 0.25 is 1/4, so this is the same as negative 1/4. And if I want a common denominator, to get 8, I need to multiply 4 by 2, so I must do that in the bottom and the top. And that gives me negative 2/8. Now we need to compare them. Which is bigger, negative 2/8 or negative 3/8? Really, we need to know which is closer to 0 since we're doing negative numbers. And we know negative 2 is closer to 0 than negative 3, so negative 2 is greater, and the symbol we want to use here is the less than symbol. Our final example is on investing. It says Carly invested $250 in 2 accounts. The table below shows the ending balance per quarter. We need to know, first of all, which investment grew more overall. In order to figure that out, we have to look at each investment and its total for the 4th quarter and subtract the original amount that she invested. And this tells us that she originally invested $250 in each of those accounts. So for account A, she ended up with $262.99. And we want to subtract what she started with, which is $250. $262.99 minus $250 gets us with a total growth of $12.99. Okay, we want to compare that to B, so we have to find the total growth for investment B. At the end of 4th quarter, she ended up with $290.07. And we want to subtract from that the original amount that she invested. And again, she invested $250 in that account. So we're going to subtract 250. When we do that, we see that 290.07 minus 250 gets us a total growth of $40.07. So which investment grew more? Investment B grew the most. Now we want to know, in which quarter did investment B grow the most? In order to figure that out, we have to go back to the table. Again, the question is, in which quarter did investment B grow the most? So let's look at the table. At the end of the first quarter, she had $260.66 in her investment B account. She had started out with $250. So for the first quarter, we want to subtract $260.66 minus the original amount, which is $250. That tells us how much it grew first quarter, and when we subtract those two, we get a total of $10.66. So in the first quarter, it grew $10.66. To figure out our growth in the second quarter, we want to take the end balance for second quarter and subtract what we started with second quarter, which is the end of first quarter. So for second quarter, we're going to take our $274.22 that she ended up with and subtract the amount she started with in second quarter, which was $260.66. Here we get an investment growth of $13.56. All right, so if we're looking for which quarter grew more, we can definitely rule out first quarter because it grew less than second quarter. Now let's check out third quarter. At the end of third quarter, she had $268.92 in her account, and she started out with $274.22. So we want to take how much she ended up with, $268.92, and subtract how much she started with, which was $274.22. Since she ended up with less than she started with for third quarter, that actually leaves us with a loss, or a negative, $5.30. So we can rule out third quarter as her greatest growth because she actually lost money during third quarter. Now let's look at fourth quarter. Fourth quarter, she ended with a balance of $290.07. And she started with the balance that was at the end of third quarter, which was $268.92. When we subtract those two, our growth in that quarter is $21.15. Now remember, the question was, in which quarter did investment B grow the most? Now our possible choices are second quarter and fourth quarter. In fourth quarter, it was $21.15. Second quarter was $13.56. So we can definitively say that investment B grew the most during the fourth quarter.